for me, I've always wanted to open a gym, and now I'm fortunate with my incredible business partners to have this performance center and sports therapy clinic here in Toronto. And one of the things I always knew I wanted to do was like make it more than a gym.
Dante has been instrumental in preparing me for the court. My mind and body feel ready for the grind of a season after training with Dante because he takes such a specific approach to his training. That was Andrew Nembhard of the Indiana Pacers talking about Dante Martella. And this is the 245th episode of the Athletes Podcast today, featuring Dante Martella of Kinetic House, the owner of a performance center and sports therapy clinic in Toronto, where we were able to visit prior to my marathon, get a little work done from Tina, an amazing osteopath, and get a little bit of resistance training with Dante after chatting about his upbringing, the pre-skip team, what he's doing at Kinetic House, and so much more. Some of the athletes that he's worked with, like Josh Hosang, amongst others, I was able to chat with, and every single person talks about how incredible it is to work with Dante. I'm very grateful to have spent a couple hours with the team in Toronto, and I can't wait for you folks to listen to this episode, the 245th of the Athletes Podcast. But I have to let you know, I may or may not have a new protein powder favorite flavor, that being Perfect Sports Banana. I don't know if you guys have tried it. I know you might be skeptical. Fruit flavors, sometimes questionable. I'm not kidding. This is literally like taking a banana, opening it up, and eating it yourself. I make a smoothie every morning for my mom and I, a little protein, start your day the right way. And I've been throwing banana flavored protein powder, diesel, that is the only way to be, with our blueberry shake. It's so good. And if you use the code AP20 at checkout, you too get to save 20%. It's the thrill of the shill. It's why you guys are here. The athlete agreement, amongst other things, keeps you coming back. But make sure to get your protein in while you're listening to this episode because we know the benefits of it. This is the 245th episode of the Athletes Podcast featuring Dante Martella. Here we go.
You're the most decorated racquetball player in U.S. history. World's strongest man. From childhood passion to professional athlete. 8-time Ironman champion. So what was it like making your debut in the NHL? What is your biggest piece of advice for the next generation of athletes? From underdogs to national champions. This is the Athletes Podcast, where high-performance individuals share their triumphs, defeats, and life lessons to educate, entertain, and inspire the next generation of athletes. Here we go.
The 245th episode of the Athletes Podcast here today at Kinetic House, where I'm going to get the full athlete treatment. We are going through, I'm 10 days out from the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. Tina's going to give me an assessment here. Dante's going to go through a full workout. This is the full athlete experience here on the Athletes Podcast here today at the Kinetic House. Tina, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
I'm excited here today because as a non-athletic regular person, I get to get the best treatment in Toronto here at Kinetic House.
Absolutely.
What else can I expect from the next session?
So we're going to take you through a few things. We're going to take a look at what your training history has been. We're going to take a look at what your past injuries have been. We're going to form a clinical picture, and we're going to do a few tests to figure out what we can do to help you towards your goals. Okay, so to start off with, what has your training regimen been like for the last, say, 2-3 months?
Basically been running and strength training every other day. So resistance training on a Monday, Tuesday run, back and forth. For the most part, maybe one rest day mixed in there per week, varying from a short, medium to long run, and then resistance training, just getting all of my essentials taken care of.
Have you ever noticed any areas where you have pain when you're running, like at the beginning, middle, or end, or has there been a change in your gait pattern while you're running?
It's been about 6 months worth of running consistently here now. I don't know necessarily whether I've noticed a huge change in my gait pattern. I think I've gotten better over time, progressed, hopefully, that's the goal. And I've noticed that my body has started just to perform better in general in all aspects. Not able to quite lift quite as heavy, but that's what happens when you're doing endurance training,
Absolutely.
I guess.
Have you noticed any blisters forming?
No.
No, perfect. Have you noticed any changes in your shoe wear pattern? So one side being worn more unevenly than the other?
No, not necessarily. Maybe running a bit more on the outsides of my feet.
Okay.
New Balance sent me some new shoes that I've
Awesome.
been wearing, and I also just train in my Vivo barefoots.
Perfect. Barefoot running is great. Have you noticed any pain in your knees, your hips, or your back?
No.
Great. Okay, so let's start off with a general assessment. I'm going to have you stand up. I'm going to take a quick look at you, and you can stay right there. Taking a look at your hips, your shoulders, seeing if there's any asymmetries that I can see. I can see there's a slight dip on your right side. Are you a right-handed dominant person?
Yes.
Yep. And I'm also looking at the head, see if there's any tilt or turning. And I can see that your head is slightly in an extended position, but your body is relatively aligned. Your ankles, your knees, and your hips are stacked upon each other, as well as your shoulders and your knees. And your head alignment is probably because your ears are trying to get over top your shoulders so that they're in balance, which makes sense. I just want to check to see what the alignment is of your back, see if everything is together, if there's any spots where I can see any kinks or any spots where it seems to be deep or shallow. Depending on where I see the shallowness and the kinks, it might be because there's a place where it's taking a little bit too much weight or not enough weight. And yours looks pretty good. So what I will also do sometimes is feel to see if the skin wants to move in certain areas, or if there's any areas which might be something I want to look at later. That seems pretty good. And now I'm going to have you face the wall, the last wall. Yep. And sometimes you'll see asymmetries happen in different ways. You might have a turn that you don't know of, and so this way, by looking at all four sides, you're getting a full look at the body. What I want you to do, I'm going to put my hands on your hips, and I'm going to take a look at what your hips are doing. So I'm going to find a point on the hips, and I'm going to have you bend forward for me as much as you can. And what I see is there's something going on in his right side. So what I see is when you go down, the right hip, the iliac, is following your body when it goes down. And so it's not separating like it should. The left side is, the right side isn't. And I'm going to see whether that's a problem of your pelvis or if that's a problem with your tailbone. So this is something we see commonly in a lot of athletes. They might not know it, but they're putting pressure on more on one side of the body than the other.
Right.
And so it just causes an imbalance that they aren't aware of until they do something extreme, like running a 26 kilometer run when they're used to running only 10 or 5 or whatever. Right? And that can also affect you in the weight room where you're putting more emphasis on the one side versus the other when you're really supposed to be working on both sides of the body.
And then, so how would you mitigate something like that for an athlete or someone who is pursuing these endurance goals?
So oftentimes it's something that they're not aware of, and what we try and make them do is make them aware of it. We do small little fixes, incremental fixes, especially if they're running up to an event. We know we won't make lasting changes in that event, but it's after the race where we'll make a huge difference in that hopefully by the time that they run the race, they won't notice any differences after the race than before. And it's just those small incremental changes that can actually make a huge difference.
No doubt.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because this doesn't feel like much is being done, but it's these subtle adjustments, kind of like as a coach, you make little tweaks.
Yep.
Yeah. Osteopathy is a different beast.
Yeah.
Altogether. You know, with massage, you can definitely feel pressure. They ask for different grades of pressure. Even athletic therapy, there's like implements being used, tape. You know, there's definitely, you know, more of like a sensory experience. This type of work with osteopathy, you often notice it when you're off the table, once you're done. There's obviously a lot that goes through while you're on the table as well. But it's just, you know, it's a very delicate craft.
Basically, we're feeling for changes in your body, and we're trying to make your body run more efficiently, more smoothly, based on your own mechanics. We're not trying to make huge changes. We're trying to make the subtle changes, the ones that your body won't necessarily notice, but you'll feel it in the end, because you won't be feeling it right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we do deal with people that have huge injuries, but sometimes we have people that have smaller things, but just a bunch of smaller things can make a huge difference.
What's your origin story in the world of sport?
Originally, I wanted to work with volleyball, but then when I started doing athletic therapy, I discovered I did not like the injuries, and I just didn't have the knowledge to help them the way that I would have wanted to. I've actually found my niche in that I cover a lot of combat sports. I work with Taekwondo Canada, work with Karate Canada. I've worked with Wrestling Canada in the past, and all these experiences have shown me that I really like the type of injuries that combat sports have. And so I've kind of gravitated towards those sports, and after working at the college level for 14 years, I decided to just help out here at Kinetic House and do my own thing.
So when you say the injuries, do you mean being able to help people recover from those injuries or prevent?
Help people recover from those injuries. Most of the injuries that I used to see in volleyball, they're the chronic long-term things that it's because of biomechanics, because of overuse, it's because people aren't training as effectively as they should or could, and things weren't adding up. With combat sports, it's more, you know how they got it, you know they're going to try and get up, and if they're not getting up, it's because there's something seriously wrong.
Yeah.
And so those injuries were more interesting to me
Right.
at the time. And now, as an osteo, I find that I have techniques that I didn't think I could to deal with something as simple as a bruise. Something as simple as, somebody pulled a muscle, but they're extremely flexible. How are they pulling muscles? Well, it's because there's something biomechanically that's not working exactly right, that we can make minor tweaks to it and see huge differences. It's not necessarily your muscles, it's not necessarily your joints, it's a combination of things that have happened to the traumas in your body, which is causing it, that's causing the restriction. And so we'll try and deal with those restrictions by working on everything that we find in the body. So even in your case, as a former goalie, I would probably look at where have you gotten hit in the past? How many headshots have you received? Or how many games did you play in net where you did the butterfly? And what type of butterfly did you do? That all makes a huge difference in the type of trauma that your body receives and what type of restrictions you might have in your body. So based on what I've seen, you've probably gotten hit in the face a few times. Your head's gone back, which is why your head is in slight extension. And so I would look definitely at your head, your neck, your upper chest, right? And see where the restrictions are coming from. See if I can fix that. That also might be why your hips are tight, because there's something up above that's causing the restriction below.
Okay.
Yeah.
So things that I can do on my own when I'm not on the table?
Absolutely. And I'll show you those in a little bit. They might involve you learning how to breathe a little bit better. It might involve you working on, something as simple as trying some meditation or relaxation stuff, and working on your general mobility of your back.
Okay.
So we're going to take a quick look at your chest, and I'm actually going to have you lying on your back.
Okay.
Yep. Just lay this right here. So what I'm going to have to do is put my hands on either side of your chest, and I'm going to have you breathe in for me. And out. Good. And in. And out. Good. Same thing, breathe in. And out. Breathe in. Okay, so what I'm seeing right now is that your lower left chest doesn't expand and contract as easily as your right side does. So we're going to do a little bit of work on the left side. And one thing that I want you to do is we're going to work on giving you some breathing exercises to focus on expanding that left side if you can.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put one hand underneath and one hand over top.
Okay.
And what I want you to do is breathe in deeply. Good. And again. Out. Good. Again. Good. Slow down the breathing. Again. And out. Good. One more. Good. Last time. Good. And relax. So, quick recheck. Feel a little bit of a difference?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Better. And I'm going to have you sit up. And you can come this way. One thing I want you to focus on when you're breathing is to open up your chest, keep your upper body upright, and you're going to focus on thinking about the chest. You want to try and expand that area. So when you breathe in, try and focus on opening up that area by doing a little bit of a side bend towards the right to get that side to open up.
Okay.
And take deep breath in and out. Slowly release the breath. You're rushing your breathing in and you're rushing the breathing out. I want you to slowly focus on letting that area expand as much as you can by taking a long, deep breath. Hold it for 5 seconds if you can, and then slowly letting it out and getting it fully out. Do that about 5-10 times over the course of this week and see if you can get that chest to expand and contract as maximally as possible, because there seems to be some kind of restriction in your left side, and I think that just a simple breathing exercise can help it. Okay? For your hips, what I want you to try and do is open the door and close the door exercises, focusing especially on that right side to try and get that hip to open up. Okay. And when you're working on this, you're going to bring your hips in maximally and bring your hips out maximally. Okay?
Okay.
Good?
Thank you so much, Tina. Appreciate all your help.
Good luck this week.
Thank you.
Was it 2 weeks?
10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days from now.
We're on. And
You're on.
we're better off now thanks to Kinetic House.
Yep.
Thanks so much. We'll see you soon. We'll be back in here.
So one of the things that Tina said was opening up the left side of the rib cage there, particularly closer to the lower ribs, which is going to have an implication on the right low back. And then we can try and get some movement through here, some movement back here, and that'll help how your hips move. So the first one, this little wedge, this could be anything like a little pillow. You're going to lie down on your right side facing the wall. So put that right under your right rib cage and just lie down on your side. Perfect. Bring the knees up like this. Perfect. And just kind of cradle your head. Perfect. This guy's going to come in like that. Yep. Reach this hand forward. So see how that already opens this up here?
Yep.
Okay. The wedge here is just pushing this up to the sky, right? So even if you were flat, we would still get something out of this, but this just kind of props this up and helps open up some of this, right? So now I want you to just breathe in and push my hand up to the sky. And now keep some of that height that you just gained, and when you exhale, feel the work down here into the ribs. Exhale. Hold. Inhale and push. Good. Slow down and get a little longer on the inhale. One more. Perfect. Good. So now in that same position that you're in, you can stand up. I'll show you this next one. So we're going to use almost that exact same position. Now we go up against the wall here like this. Feet are up on the wall, just like that. So now your left side is up like this. Right side is down just like you did. Feet are going to be about 6 to 10 inches apart. And you're going to rock one forward like that. Top leg is going to drive forward. Bottom knee is going to come up. touch the top knee, come back down. So we got 10 reps. Lie down on your left side.
Tell the Athletes Podcast listeners a bit of your backstory once you guys just
Slide back a little bit towards me. Yeah, perfect. I think to the backstory. Good. So now, without that thing, you're gonna try and recreate the same position that you had. Good. This foot's gonna be a little higher. Toes against the wall. Good. Drive this knee forward. And now hold it there and drive this knee up to this knee. Good. Some of my backstory you were saying?
Yeah.
Good. So as far as athletics, getting into the world of athletics was something that, we'll talk a little bit more when we sit down on the podcast, but not something I necessarily targeted. It was something that kind of came up organically based on my interest in the world of sport. I was originally kind of targeting my way through the nutrition world. And, before you know it, I was in a position to work with athletes, and it's just something I fell in love with. Nice. Keep this heel against the wall. One more. Harder than it looks, eh?
Yeah.
Good. And now just stand up, move around a bit, and we'll do one last little drill. Just kind of move your hips. How's that feel?
Good.
Feels
Until
nice,
this work, yeah.
Open up already, right?
Yeah.
And then last one to kind of tie everything together, it's a little more dynamic before we get into some of the heavier lifting. On your side here, reach your top arm and your top leg, look over your shoulder, and then bridge up. Just like that. On your Bible side.
Okay.
Good. Knees together. Perfect. On your left forearm. Perfect. Drive your right arm forward. And now drive your right leg back. Good. Get as long as you can from here. And now bridge up and drive your hips forward. Freeze. I'm going to pull you back here. I want you to drive the hips forward.
Okay.
Good. And now you go reach, reach, reach. Oh, stretch everything out. Look over your left shoulder here. And then come up and push the hips forward. Good. So it's kind of like a nice little active stretch here. Moving through a lot of the stuff that we just worked on. Opening up the hips, opening up the rib cage. Perfect. 2 more. Good. And then drive up. Bend the knee a little bit. Boom. Last one.
Oh, that feels good.
That's nice, eh?
Yeah, that's so good.
This one's kind of worth the price of admission. It's like probably one of the most frequently prescribed drills that I have. Because it just kind of connects everything together, upper body, lower body.
Yeah.
Same thing on the other side.
Here. Stack.
Yeah. Top arm reaches, top leg reaches back towards me. Touch the floor back here. Look over your right shoulder now. And then drive up. Perfect. Drive the hips forward. Perfect. Couple more.
That's crazy.
So simple, right?
Yeah.
Last one. Good. Now just stand up, move it around, and lift some weights. Easy peasy.
Yeah. That's actually crazy, the difference, though.
So test that little thing that you did with Tina where you bend over, touch your toes.
Oh,
Different, eh?
Yeah.
So that's like some of her work already,
yeah.
taking shape, and then we just support that with some of the work in here. That's it.
Heck yeah.
Cool?
Let's get into it.
All right, let's
Thank you,
lift.
sir.
All right, so I'll demo it
Yep.
again. So the one-arm dumbbell row was obviously a horizontal rowing pattern. Now we're going to kind of support that with a pressing pattern, but much the same kind of concept here. Heavy on that front foot, light on the back leg, and we're trying to keep that rib cage stacked over top of the pelvis. Reaching, hold for a second, down slow. So there's a degree of preventing rotation down below, but encouraging it up top.
So anti-rotation at the bottom.
Yeah, and rotation through that kind of midsection.
And almost a similar kind of
Very similar.
position.
Yeah, heavy on that left side. Good. And then I like to use the opposite arm here, so reach your left arm forward and notice how that pulls you.
Yeah.
Good, and now just elbow to hip. Good.
Like that.
Nice, down slow. Freeze on the next one at the top. Freeze. Watch here, we're gonna try and bring the ribs down. See that? Now reach a little bit more. Boom, there you go. Now you're encouraging some of the movement through that shoulder blade and getting more out of this work for your shoulder as a whole. Down slow, eyes up a little bit. Press. Good. See if you can press from your abs. Press from the belly. There you go. Working the whole time. Good. Keep going, a couple more. So a lot of times it's like separate, quote unquote, core stability work or whatever you want to call it. Abdominal work and all that definitely has a part to play. But the more we can integrate that with some of these, more challenging movements, the more we get out of it. Good. Last one. Eyes up, eyes up, eyes up. Good. And now bring it down. So you'll notice that while you're going through that, it's very thought heavy, right? There's a lot going through your head. I gotta engage this, hold that, push here, pull that, reach, blah, blah, blah. Where's my head, where's my eyes? The better you get at some of the fundamental concepts, which is just managing pressure down here, the more relaxed you can be with something like this, right? So what we don't want is, there's a time and place as we load this up and it gets very heavy where I almost don't give a shit anymore. I'm just fuck it, just get the thing up overhead, right? But especially in these warm-up sets, I think there's an opportunity to work on better quality movement, which involves a degree of being able to relax while you're working. And that's very characteristic of athleticism as a whole, right? It's not just how fast, how powerful, how strong some of these athletes are, but it's when and how well they relax.
And your ability to get into that flow state.
For sure.
And still maintain that degree of awareness.
For sure. And that speaks to the overlap of the physiological and the psychological, right? For sure. So let's go a little other side there. Straight here.
And this is basically any athlete's going to benefit from this training.
Yeah,
everyone
right
needs
foot forward a bit.
Everyone needs anti-rotation.
Yeah. Yeah, the spine is designed to both produce and resist rotation. I think too often people get locked into one camp or another. The answer is generally both. And how much one person needs is going to depend on the individual, their goals, their previous training history. Nice. Good. Lock that right foot in. Don't let it move. Push from the belly. Up. Good. Good. And now on the next 3 reps, just notice your breathing. I want you to try and calm it down. Inhale on the way down. Exhale on the way up. Good. Last one. Good. So that's another thing. Now that's a finer point even still. There's the technical execution of your limbs, and then there's the cadence of your breathing, which can help support how efficient you are with movement, and in of itself is something that can progress objectively over time. You'll notice if we were mic'd up there, for a couple of reps, there was these short breath, 3 or 4 breaths per rep, almost 3 reps on the way down. It's but because again, you're thinking, you're trying to manage a lot, but tuning into the breathing is probably one of the quickest ways that we can get the whole system to either relax or excite, depending on how we breathe. Cool?
Yeah.
All right, let's load it up and go again.
And then would you stack this and do focus on the one exercise at a time, or would you kind of 1A, 1B?
I think it depends on the population. The vast majority of times, just from an efficiency perspective, I like to do 2, 3, maybe even 4 exercises back to back and run through them. That kind of speaks to a little bit of that, the breathing economy we're talking about, how efficient you are with your breathing. Yes, the muscles are resting from this, but the whole system is still fatigued, but I'm still asking you to do more. Can you relax when you need to relax? In other words, the short rest time between here and there, and then can you fire it up quick enough to get a heavier row or press or whatever. Okay, so some of the drills that we did there, one of the criticisms of things like that is that we're not loading the body. So we're not just doing those drills and not loading the body, we're still lifting heavy. So we're gonna use a 1-arm dumbbell row now to support some of the work that we did there. Breath work, getting some of the finer point movements through the pelvis, opening up the rib cage. We can now translate that to something heavy like a 1-arm dumbbell row. So technically I want the execution to be like this. You can still go heavy, even if you grab a 100-pound dumbbell here, as long as you can keep what we don't want to move static and what we do want to move dynamic, you're good. So one hand is a point of reference, that same side leg is going to be down on the ground. back foot kind of becomes our little anchor, but most of the weight is on this front foot, okay? I'm gonna try and keep this steady, keeping my back steady, and reach across with the dumbbell. So you'll see that that's opening up some of the ribcage stuff that we were working on and keeping the pelvis steady. So from here, pull the elbow to the back hip. Just like that. Cool? Yeah. Give me 6 to 8 reps, maybe start with something a little lighter. And then we can work
So
our
a
way
slight
up.
twist.
Reaching across to the big toe.
Okay. 6 to 8 reps. You want to slight.
So you're gonna start, we want you to row with your left hand so that we open all this up.
Right.
So we want left toes back behind you, right foot forward.
Just like that.
Bring this right foot a little further forward. So a nice cue here is back toe in line with the front heel. So
Perfect.
right there.
Okay, back toe, front heel.
Heavy on this leg.
Heavy on right leg.
Shoot the hips back a little bit.
Okay.
So now, this has to stay locked in by using these guys.
Okay.
And when you reach across, I want you to feel how this opens up.
Okay.
Okay, away you go.
Okay.
Grab the dumbbell, heavy with that right hand. Good. And give me like a 3-second count on the way down. 3, 2, 1. Good. And now I want you to keep the head still too. Yes. There you go. So now we're isolating rotation through that thoracic spine. Okay. There's a degree of preventing rotation, but we're also opening up some of the tissue that's associated with the lateral side of the rib cage there, the lat, these types of things, which is coinciding with some of the work that we did on the floor there. Let's go 2 more, reach across. 1 more. Nice. There you go. How does that feel relative to like a different one-arm dumbbell row you've done before?
Just
Have
more
you-
intent around
Yeah.
that. Keeping everything steady too, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that that is in place.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from, it's an underrated aspect of like lifting in general, but even for an upper body exercise like this, foot pressure, right? Like it's not just about the upper body, it's how we use the lower body to integrate with the upper body. So foot pressure with a row, you want to be heavy on that one side, very light back here, and then kind of ripping through it. See the other side?
Down here. There.
There you go. Heavy on the left foot. Reach, stay low. Pull back to the hip, and reach across. There you go.
What are common mistakes with this exercise then? Just the lack of.
Probably the setup more often than not. So like right now you can see how your right heel kind of went to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get right up on those toes. That's gonna push you forward more so on that opposite foot. Perfect. So I would say like foot pressure is one thing, like I said, getting set up. The arm path is another big one, so people will often try and aim for higher height with the elbow when we're actually, trying to move along this more horizontal trajectory with the elbow in back to the hip as opposed to vertical up to the sky. There you go. Awesome. Nice. Beauty.
It's interesting you say I have an ability to stay in the moment, because I find one of my maybe struggles or things that I'm working on is staying present, not being too excited about the future or maybe discouraged at the difficulty that is associated with trying to do something like this.
Yeah. I think we'll probably explore that a little bit today. I think there's people struggle with applying, or there's a powerful kind of aha moment for people when you just show them that you may already be adopting this beneficial strategy somewhere else in your life with some other endeavor, and maybe it's because there's a degree of comfort that you have with that thing that you're just automatically, or at least more automatically, adopt this ability to, in this case, be present, relax, slow down. And then when there's something either new, uncomfortable, challenging, or a different type of challenge, you just struggle to apply that. It's not as simple as that, but very often people just struggle to apply, that same style of thinking. And I think it becomes this powerful moment. And I see this a ton in rehab, where you're like, listen, you're already doing this. Like, you're already applying this kind of process-oriented, chip away, brick by brick approach. just apply that to what this new endeavor is, this new scary, situation that you find yourself in. And inevitably there's that alone is kind of like, oh shit, like a cool realization for people.
When was that first moment for you?
Oh, fuck. I think the first moment was, at least as it pertains to this industry, training, health, nutrition, was what we alluded to before when you and I were lifting, was like the decision to get in the gym yourself, where athletes, to me at that point in my life, just it felt like it was such a world away. We talked a little bit before about, your background in this industry, background in athletics, and for me it was non-existent, right? Like there was a time in my life when I was really young, like probably, before I was 15 years old, where sports were, something I was, involved with, interested in, this type of thing. And then there was, through a number of different experiences in my life, through my mid-teens, right through to my late teens, where there was a lot of other life stuff that I was dealing with, and that, sort of faded into the background for me. And I didn't have this ability to realize that was like, that I lost a passion, right? Like it just happened by nature, but I didn't realize like this was something I'm incredibly passionate about. And it's maybe reinforced this idea that athletes are so far away from like what I'm interested in. And then I think as I started to realize like nutrition, training is something I'm passionate about, and then getting into the gym and having this realization that every little thing that you do in the gym can contribute to moving forward at a pretty decent clip, especially when you're new to the game, right? And that was like a powerful moment for me, maybe more in retrospect than it was at that exact moment of, if I chip away, then you can get to where you want to go.
Yeah, like, I think the gym provides that with the newbie gains. We talked about that more than anything initially, but then you can start to see changes in your body over time relatively fast, like you said. If you're dialed in with your nutrition, you can see tremendous change, both physical and mental. And then people end up staying with their journey, not because of the physical, but because of the mental and the other aspects that it impacts. To your point, in business, you can apply progressive overload, progressive stimulus, as Jordan Challow would say. Like, there's ways that you can integrate these performance methods into everyday life and see success, and then you're like, oh man, it's a game. Everyone's playing the game. Some people are playing it better than others. When you break down, we talked about how education has been formative for you, but now, even as we were working out, you're like, sometimes you got to rip it. Sometimes you got to think about it. How do you do that in business and in life? Yeah,
I think that's a good question. I think probably the most powerful learning moments are by experience themselves. So, the idea of like going into that question with this idea that I have to have an answer before I try is already putting yourself behind the 8 ball, as far as I'm concerned. Because you're going to learn a great degree by actually putting yourself out there first. So a lot of people put the cart before the horse, where it's like, oh, I need to know if this is going to be something that's fruitful or not before I attempt it. You're going to find out if it's fruitful or not by fucking attempting it, right? Or the degree to which it's applicable to your journey or whatever, right? And so I think that's, send it, rip it, however we want to say it. I think that's just always the strategy. I think that at least generally, I try not to use absolutes, but for the most part, I think there has to be a degree of like willingness to get your hands dirty and send it, because then you're going to find out much more efficiently, effectively, and inform further decisions in a way that has a greater depth and more power than someone telling you like you should only send it to a 7 out of 10. Well, it's like, fuck it, let's try an 8 or 9 or 10 and fucking see what a 7 actually means, So how do you, if you were to apply that to a status celebrity athlete that you are now responsible for if you're training here at Kinetic House, which is an incredible facility if you haven't been yet in Toronto, you've got to also be aware of the fact that you don't want that person injured. Hey, Andrew, I want you to rip it, but I need you to rip it to the best of your abilities and not break anything. How do you describe that for a young coach listening? Yeah, great question. So I think that, this will help shape, my previous answer a little better, or give it some context that like by nature of being willing to send it doesn't mean that you're being reckless or careless, right? There should be a degree of thought, of forecasting, a degree of like being able to potentially buffer what consequences are at play without sacrificing that main intent of like, I'm still going to fucking send it here, right? And send it is, you know, it's very vague in this context, but let's just take it to that example of working with an NBA player like Andrew. I take on a much greater responsibility there, where, you know, if you're in the industry, you might look at it and say, well, why isn't he pushing it harder? Why aren't you doing more challenging movements? Why aren't you squatting heavier? Why aren't you deadlifting heavier? Well, if you've worked with athletes, one of the things that is a constant is this nature of a timeline crunch. They come to you, Andrew in particular, this offseason is a great example. Deep playoff run, gets named to the Canadian Olympic team, here for 2 weeks, then in Paris, then here for 3 weeks, then back to the season. Pretty short off season.
Yeah, 5 weeks total training.
Basically, right? 5 to 7. And we're in contact while he's there, and we support him throughout the season. But, you know, if I were to take someone like that, it's always going to be context dependent or individual specific. I'd rather take someone like that who's already incurred a great deal of fatigue, who's coming off of not just the Olympics, but, you know, the fallout from the Olympics, and then there's, you know, rest week, and, you know, athletes do what they do on rest weeks, and then you come back
and just even having a break during his summer, right? Like, think about from a human being. I know, you know, people during a 9 to 5, you know, take a couple weeks vacay throughout their year. As an athlete, people just assume.
Well-deserved, right? Yeah. Well-deserved, as they should. And so you come back, and there's a nature of like having to understand both the person and the fundamentals of, you know, physiological needs, biomechanical needs, these types of things. So when you marry both your relationship with the person with a deep understanding of biomechanics and physiology, that constraint has already been set for you, right? I don't choose that he needs to send it to this level when his body is telling me this is the max we can go.
Right.
So you look for different things. There's a certain style of questioning that we ask. There's a certain way that they carry their body language. There's a certain way that they move that's going to help you indicate, and you'll learn this, you know, through experience as a coach, indicate what that person's threshold is today, this week, this month. And by nature of sending it with a certain constraint, we choose exercises that by themselves, when you're pushing this exercise as hard as you can, it's naturally going to constrain how much you can load it, because we know that the body is already slightly compromised because it's under recovered. So that's kind of how you go about it.
I'm always curious because, you know, we talked about, Tina just did some work on me. I'm 10 days out from Toronto Marathon.
Yeah.
I'm like, I understand a low CNS day, being a little drained, maybe not nutrition at where it should be. And it's like, okay, as a coach, you get an athlete for an hour or two per day. You don't know what they've done, whether they're being honest with you. That takes a certain individual that has the ability to draw that out. One of the things I admire about you, listening to a pod, also talk about the psychological aspect, that you almost put more emphasis on that. How'd you acquire that knowledge? Where's that come from? How'd you do it?
I think it starts with, you know, going back to that willingness to be curious, you know, like daring to be curious enough to to honor the thing that's always kind of crossing your mind in some way, shape, or form. So growing up in the restaurant industry, my parents had a restaurant in the city of Toronto for 3+ decades. Myself and my 3 siblings grew up working in the industry, working in the restaurant specifically. And in Italian, there's a word, it was an Italian restaurant, we're of an Italian background, there's a word, casa bottega, which means like house and store, or business and home, right? And it's kind of one word that evokes this imagery of like both of those kind of being the same thing, because very often in Italy and European towns, you'll see businesses, you know, on the storefront level, and then the house just above it, or the apartment just above it. And that's how we lived. We grew up above the restaurant. And so it was very much kind of synonymous, where house and home were, you know, house and business were all together.
Work-life balance, ever heard of it?
Yeah, no, that doesn't exist. You know, you wake up in the kitchen, there's a Sebastian Maniscalco joke, one of my favorite comedians, Italian-American guy, of course, respect, where he talks about, he's like, I met my father for the first time at 14 years of age. And he came around the corner, he's like, hey, go start a business, you know? And like, to a certain degree, that was very much true. It was like this responsibility that was almost like inherently like bred into you as you grew up. You know, it's like, I'm going to be asked to either like be involved in this business or there's just an expectation that you work there. And I'm grateful for it because I learned a ton there. And one of the things I learned was that it wasn't just a restaurant. It was much more than a restaurant. They offered Italian language classes. They offered cooking lessons. They offered, it was a space that was rented out for ceremonies, for different, presentations, for speaker series. They had a number of politicians from around the world. There was, concerts. It was all kinds of things that were run through the restaurant. Although very much on the front of it, it was a restaurant. So for me, I've always wanted to open a gym, and now I'm fortunate with my incredible business partners to have this performance center and sports therapy clinic here in Toronto. And one of the things I always knew I wanted to do was like make it more than a gym, right? Like on the face, when you come in, there's dumbbells, barbells, whatever. But when you come in, it's more than that. And what is it? There's always it's a qualitative, like can't quite put your finger on it. But for me, it's a very intentful, I'm putting my finger on it. It's relationships. It's the ability to connect with people. And how do you do that? It's something I grew up learning from my father and my mom in the restaurant industry, that you have to be willing to go and create the conversation yourself. And it was something that as a kid working in the restaurant, it was, thrust upon you. I turned the corner and my dad was like, hey, come and say hi to so-and-so. And you're, a 12, 14-year-old kid, very illegally working behind the bar, pouring alcoholic drinks, but you look up and it's someone of prominence, whoever it is, an athlete, a politician, and you just know in that moment there's a presence here, I have to act a certain way, and you adopt a behavior. Yeah. Why is that? Well, it's certain subconscious psychological elements at play there, and I kind of started exploring that slowly, and eventually it led to, a passion for communication and psychology.
It's almost the athlete to coach relationship too, right? There's an inherited respect that's there and that you should provide as an athlete to your coach. We just actually at Kelowna Hockey Fest in Kelowna, we were listening to the Oilers head chef with Shallow there, and he was talking about the fact that nutrition brings so much more than just the food. It's the camaraderie within the team. It's the excitement around what meal's coming next, how you can bond together over that food. And, when you talk about communication that goes hand in hand with what you're eating during your day-to-day and afterwards, and how the team feels the next day, the next week. There's a story that he shared. Air Canada decided to throw some treats on the plane after the Oilers made the Stanley Cup Finals, and McDavid jumped on that plane. He's like, immediately sent a text to the coach or the head chef. He's like, what the blank is this stuff doing on here? Yeah. They are that detailed that everything that goes everywhere, just the amount of thought that goes into that, I'm always shocked. You see it, obviously, when you're working with players individually. Are there specific players that you love working with in particular? I say players, athletes. Is it Gen Pop? Are there specific sports that athletes pursue that you find are kind of unique or that have a sixth gear that you love working with in particular when you see those intangibles that they apply?
Well, it's funny you bring up Connor. Like, I've had the good fortune of having worked with him in the past briefly. I'm not his coach. He has amazing coaches with Gary Roberts' program. Adrian and Sylvie, who work with him very frequently, friends of mine. They work with him every offseason, I should say. And, in those short experiences that I had with him, that mentality was rang true very quickly. It was very apparent, very obvious that there's a presence here, much like, me introducing myself to these people of prominence in my youth. It was very obvious that there was this guy brings something to the table, and it's my responsibility to match that or to respect that and to give that space. Yeah. And that, I think, that inherent, I get often asked, what's the best advice for young coaches? And I always say the same thing: leave the room better than you found it. And I think the reason why I love that advice is what it takes, two things. It takes two approaches kind of, well melded together. One, being able to appraise what makes this room successful already when you walk into it. So there's a degree of humility that you have to sensitively tune into what's already happening that's good here. And there's kind of a challenge to you of what can I do to contribute and make this better, right? So it's both an awareness and kind of an impetus to act on that and do something about it. And so with Connor in particular, it's giving that respect, it's giving him the space to do his thing. But you notice the humility and the work ethic kind of melded together very quickly. He's not brash or arrogant by any means, but he's very detail oriented, right? If you're going to ask him to do something, he's going to want to know what the exact tempo is. He's going to want to know what the reps are. He's not just going to go into an exercise haphazardly without an intent. And I think that's one of the things that you see prominently with athletes. So I like to work with everyone who has that, right? And I like to, the people who don't or don't come to it by nature that I have the good fortune of working with, I like to try and discover that with them, right? Like, or what can I do to help them discover that kind of approach? Because I think it's powerful.
Yeah, the weight room can instill that, like that dog in you.
For sure.
That some people don't have, but then when you have a couple 100 pounds on your back or over top of your head, you got to get that up.
Yeah, sink or swim, for sure.
Are there moments that you taper that in or expose your athletes to when you know it's the right time?
For sure. And I think it comes back to reading body language, right? Like there's going to be times, rehab or not, you take on different approaches, different energies, different psychological energies, go at different stages of the training process. So let's take, an athlete in the early stages of a rehab. They got injured in season, their season's over, now they have to begin this long, arduous rehab process. And no matter who it is, there's, generally a degree of anxiety that's present with it. Whether they let that on or not, overtly, it's there. And I think being able to get to the point where you have to tell them, listen, relax, the season's done, there's nothing we can do about that, let's control what we can, which is, get better today. And maybe you have some success with that over time, but there comes a tipping point where at some point in the rehab process, even if the season's not next week, you notice that this person has fallen into a bit of what we call like a rehab mindset, where they don't want to push themselves anymore. They start to think more about what hurts than what doesn't. They start to think more about what's limiting them than what opportunities they have. And it's present in their body language and the language that they use. Now's the time to flip the script. Now's the time to tell them like, hey, listen, I know we've been through this rehab together. You've worked hard. I get it. Acknowledgement off the hop, right?
Yeah.
But I think you have more in you, right? Positive language. I'm encouraging them to bring more. I'm not just, cracking the whip and saying, fuck, you suck, do more. That doesn't work very rarely. So I think some level of positive encouragement with, a very kind of, I know your standard is here, whether you're injured or not, let's pick up the pace here a little bit. And then very quickly, you very often see this kind of like flip switch and then they're on it. So I think that's always a cool moment for me.
I can imagine a non-cool moment is when Mike Camilleri calls you out for not sending him and Andy Chiodo the stretches you did the night before.
Yeah, good times, man. Learned a lot. I think, again, going back to the whole willingness to send it, like, I stepped into that training environment with no training experience whatsoever. And, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have worked with, incredible athletes in the NHL in a pretty cool, like, grungy training environment. And one of the things I learned routinely was you're going to fuck up just like they're going to fuck up. Their coach is going to tell them they fucked up, But if you can find a way to like level with them on a human level or humanize the process and the relationship a little bit, and not be afraid to kind of acknowledge when you've done something wrong and be very quick to then right it, you'll put yourself in a good spot. And that was a fun moment where Cammy called me out for something I promised him to send us a list of stretches that he wanted to do, and then I forgot, and the day went as it went, and he just fucking laid into me the next day. But it was a powerful moment. I could tell you I was very positively on edge after that, where you're just, that speaks to like the sensitivity to the environment. Every time I walked into that room or saw him, I was like, what does Cammy need right now?
Hyper aware.
Like, is his drink filled up? Is it fucking this, that, and then eventually that dissipates, and there's this kind of like, he recognizes what you're doing, and then you can kind of get back to like joking and being cool with it. But if I didn't have that approach, I don't think you reestablish that relationship.
What sports did you play growing up? Because you said you were playing everything up till 15, then you discovered the gym.
Like hockey, a little bit of hockey. I actually liked like maybe quote unquote non-traditional sports in Canada. Badminton was something that I like gravitated towards in my like really early youth. Yeah. I just liked like the speed of the sport itself.
It's incredible to watch.
Crazy. At the highest level, like it's one of those sports where you just like from the hips down, like delete what's going on and the fact that it's called a shuttlecock, like just throw that out the window and just appraise from like a movement. Like the agility is unparalleled.
There's a reason on social media people are like, this guy's prepping for badminton or this gal's prepping for badminton. Like, it's legit.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's underrated.
For sure. What are some other underrated sports in your opinion?
Tennis, again, like another racket sport.
Which are amazing for mental acuity, like the results,
dexterity, like kind of hand-eye coordination. And tennis is one of those interesting ones because like there's the necessity to be able to produce power. There's the necessity to be able to produce power repeatedly. In other words, power endurance.
Yeah.
Then there's like aerobic fitness. Some of these matches are 3-4 hours in length.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's agility. There's, so you look at a sport like hockey, which is very traditional, lacrosse, another one, like very traditional Canadian sport. You would very quickly say, like, it's speed, strength, power, endurance. These types of power, endurance. Those are very obvious, right? But you wouldn't look at a sport like tennis and apply the same. But it's that and more because of the nature of that kind of conditioning level that's required. It's infinite respect to tennis players at any level. Having been fortunate to work with a couple of them. Another sport was soccer, classic Italian background, right? Like played goalie a little bit growing up, and I think
same tendies.
Love it, man. Even Shallow, right? Shout out to Shallow for helping us get this organized.
I think there's something to be said about goalies.
Don't do it. Don't say it.
It's not that we're crazy,
a little
man.
Fucked up, right?
I mean, I think there's more of there's thought going on.
Yeah.
Whether
it's
people call that crazy.
Yeah.
I think there's people are going through a bit more of a process.
For sure.
And you're able to witness the entire game being played, whereas athletes who are on the ice as a centerman or defenseman only have 3/4 of the ice or half the ice. Your goalie, you see everything. And I think there's something to be said for those athletes that see everything. They absorb more if they have their eyes open.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to, again, like the challenge of different sports, different positions. We talked earlier when we were working out, like it's not just like when you're on, but how well athletes can like quote unquote turn it off psychologically and physiologically. This kind of like rest, this static and dynamic kind of nature or interplay. And I think, you look at a goalie in the NHL, like there can be minutes, definitely seconds, but sometimes minutes at a time where there's nothing going on for them.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they're hemmed in, the puck gets dumped in, now it's shift over them, and it's overtime, and all of a sudden they went from like watching for 2 minutes to like doing the splits and like throwing their body all over the place and like being dialed in and doing that very methodically and with care. And so I think gravitating towards not just sports that had a very unique element, but like a genuine passion for the athletes that I looked up to growing up there was like this singularity to them. There was this very like unique to the self element to what they did. Goaltenders specifically, I loved, Gianluigi Buffon, the Italian national goaltender legend.
Yeah.
Curtis Joseph, obviously growing
Cujo,
up in Toronto, and so I relished that. I looked forward to that. I enjoyed the responsibility of that kind of like, being the last line of defense type thing. But it also manifested itself in different ways for me in like the hobbies that I selected as well. Poker, like No Limit Texas Hold'em poker was something I was like extremely fond of growing up.
Okay.
And it's like when you get down to heads up and it's you versus the other person, it's psychological warfare, and it's a really, really interesting play on communication, on psychology. One of my favorite poker players is Phil Ivey, and I took a lot from going back to your question about how did I learn some of these things about communication and psychology. Phil Ivey taught me a lot, not directly, indirectly very much, about reading people, about being aware of your surroundings, about tells. And so I think that goes a long way in communication, and it just was a theme that was present in some of the sports that I gravitated towards.
What are some of the other themes that make Dante Martella unique? And like the hammer is the
Is that a nickname now?
That's what I'm going to coin it. Yeah.
We'll take it.
I think I always like to ask this question because there's specific attributes that people bring to the table that makes them unique, that allows them to succeed in whatever they pursue. Clearly, you've got some of those maybe identified, and if you don't, you're being humble.
Yeah. Unique is an interesting word. I don't know if they're unique, but I know what makes me me. Like, I don't know if they're. I guess everyone's unique to their own degree, but I think it's like in the amount. Like, I'd use this analogy a lot with my athletes, or like it's like dials on a switchboard, or for a DJ, right? Like, because oftentimes they're like, oh, we're not doing enough conditioning, or there's apprehension around when am I going to lift heavier? And I'm like, listen, all the qualities are just going to be present all the time. Sometimes this dial is going to go up, and this dial comes down a little, but it's never going to go down to zero for the most part. It's there, it's present. So I guess for me, like, if I say something like, I like to like bring like a thoughtful approach to training. I like to quote unquote focus on the individual. both from an injury perspective, from a movement perspective, but also from this kind of psychological element we've alluded to. So I don't know if that makes me unique, but it's definitely one of the dials on my switchboard that I find is high. It's a very high priority for me. What else? I think a willingness to constantly take risks as a person, as a business owner.
To send it.
As it were, but to have guardrails in place as well. You know, to be humble enough to like ask for help, or you know, at least you know, be aware of the insecurities and kind of limitations that I have as a person, and do my best to you know, acknowledge them and make those part of the process as well. Lean on other people, this kind of thing.
Who are those some of the people that you looked towards or look up to as you were going through this process?
In business?
Business and strength conditioning. Like, as you're talking about that, you're leaning on individuals, but you also probably, you know, when you were going through over the past decade, aspiring to own your own gym.
Yeah.
Who are those people that you looked up to that you could kind of see that vision coming to fruition?
I mean, you know, the guys at Prescript, you don't have to look too much farther than that. Of course, my business partners, my family, my wife, my 2 dogs, like it's crazy how, you know, how impactful these people have been in my life. But, you know, I look to what Shallow and Junta and Killian have built at Prescript, and the ethos that they model, right? This isn't just like who you see on social media, it's very much who they are. And I remember when I started my business prior to Kinetic House, my independent business, you know, it was one of the first things I did was reach out to Shallow. And we didn't really have a relationship yet, but I saw what they were doing with Prescript, and I was already like 8-9 years in the game, and I felt like I was a pretty good coach. I'd had some experiences with some of the aforementioned athletes, but when I left my previous place of employment and took the leap to like start my own business, I think you just naturally gravitate towards like people who are doing that. And like you see the people who are, you know, maybe a little ahead of you, and where you want to go. And more than that, again, like I prioritize the relationship. So I looked at what they were doing, and I took L1 because I wanted to get to know them more. Right? Like I wanted to see what the course was about and check my knowledge level, you know, where my perceived, you know, abilities were relative to where they actually are. And I took a lot out of that course, and there was some fundamentals for sure that I felt like comfortable with, but I also took, you know, some learning lessons home. But the most fruitful thing was like reaching out to Shallow and saying, "Hey man, thanks for what you do with Prescript. You know, it was one of the reasons why I took the leap and did my own thing. I saw what you guys were doing. You know, I felt like now was the right time. Let me know if you have any feedback for me." That's the message I sent to him. Pretty quickly he responded and, you know, said like, "Keep doing your thing," words of encouragement. And then we just kept in touch, and the relationship formed as it has.
Yeah, now you're running L3 down in Tampa with them L2 courses.
Yeah.
You've got foot, ankle, nutrition. You're ripping everything, hey? Is there anything you can't do or anything you avoid doing? Like,
yeah, I think my wife has a pretty long list. Some of the things I can't do, she'll be happy to
we'll
share
get her
that
on
with
for
you.
the next episode.
Please do.
The bloopers.
But yeah, we've got L2 is coming up, and we're teaching a couple of weeks of lectures on the foot and the hand specifically, and that came by way of you know, again, this goes back to like there's not like one linear path for the way you go about things. I went from like not being involved in athletics for several years of my life to training some of the best athletes in the world very quickly. I went from not taking L2 to like teaching L3, you know, so all of that came by way of like putting myself out there type thing. And so when communication and psychology was something I knew, this is, you know, has a relationship with mental health, which I'm very passionate about, and this is something that I want to explore and bring to my craft and, you know, place an emphasis on, I reached out to Shallow and said like, "Hey man, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Is there an opportunity to do this with Prescript?" They were trying to, you know, scale down on some of the courses they were offering, but they were launching L3. And it was like perfect timing for me, and what felt like for Prescript as well. What I brought as far as like a unique element with a focus on communication and how that impacts, you know, a coach's journey, and getting back to working with some of these elite athletes was very powerful for me. So as much as I felt like I brought something to them, it was incredibly rewarding for me to get back to a level where I had built my business for a couple of years. I had worked with some elite athletes, but, I hadn't had that experience of being in a room with like 20, 30 of the, tops of the tops for a few years. And so they afforded me that opportunity, which I'm super grateful for. And then L2 came after that.
And now you got Kinetic House you're going to be filling out. Dude, I sincerely appreciate you having me out here, getting me on the table with Tina, putting me through the ringer here with a couple lifts. First of many conversations. Where can people find you on socials? Is it something that they can be reaching out? One of the things I always do is leave space here for people to share their biggest piece of advice. You've dropped like an hour plus worth of bombs here, but where can people find you? Where should they be sourcing out your content if they want to learn more about what you got going on? And then drop that last wisdom gold nugget if you got me.
Okay, so you can find us at Kinetic House, HAUS, on Instagram. Follow us there because we'll be launching some of the services that we have on our website coming soon. I'm specifically at Malleus Performance, Malleus Performance on Instagram. Happy to chat about any of these concepts if you want to. And then come check us out. Come by the gym if you want to check us out. We're kind of uptown Toronto here on Orpheus Road, 107 Orpheus Road by Yorkdale Mall. Come check us out. And Gold Nugget Wisdoms. So I said that I love Leave the Room Better Than You Found It. That's probably my favorite one.
Shiloh didn't love the way I positioned this question, so maybe I push something in particular here. You've worked with TV personalities like Kate Burness.
Yeah.
You've got Olympic athletes under your belt. You've got the podcast that you've hosted. You possess a plethora of skills. As you continue to add layers to your tool belt, what are some things as you focus on staying present, but also look to the future that you want to achieve, that you can put out there that people can maybe associate with or align with, and maybe
I
even...
dig it. So you mentioned Kate. She actually gave me a great piece of advice. So when I hosted her on my podcast, so Kate is Kate. She's incredible, right? She does so many things so well. And speaking specifically to her broadcast career, not that I want to limit her to that in any capacity, I was curious. I'm hosting her on a podcast. We've been friends for a long time. I train her, but we've been friends for a long time. And I was curious because going into that, there was still a moment, despite knowing this person really well, there was still a moment where I was like, oh fuck, I gotta be dialed in here.
Sure.
This is Kate Burness.
Yeah.
And I asked her at the end a very similar question, what advice do you have for me? And she was like, ditch the script. So I think ditching the script in a certain way is incredibly powerful. You got to learn the rules of the book, but you also got to know when to throw the rule book out. Because being able to kind of stay in the moment, be organic with it, tune to the person and the relationship, that to me has been a powerful lesson that I'll never tire of learning. And Kate was the one that kind of had maybe the most powerful reminder for me, because she said, if you can ditch the script and just play off of the person, especially in an interview, much like you've done, it just makes for a way more organic and powerful interaction.
As the title of the Prescript episode that you're on, 490, I think it is, Play the Man.
There you go.
Yeah,
Cool. Love it. Full circle.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, dude. We'll do it again.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Athletes Podcast, the 245th episode. Big shout out goes to Dante and Tina for coming on the show, helping me out in preparation for my marathon that we finished in under 4 hours. Can you believe it? Can you really believe it? That was pretty crazy. Hey, I just want to also say thank you to you for being along right until the very end of this episode. And if you listen to every single episode, I sincerely appreciate it more than you know. I can't thank you enough for tuning in on a weekly basis, supporting us, purchasing perfect sports products, using the code AP20 at checkout so that we can keep doing this on a weekly basis. I hope you enjoyed the show. I can't wait for next week's episode for you to tune in. Oh, and by the way, I listened to a Mel Robbins podcast that talks about the fact we need to hear that people love us more. And I want to remind you, if you're listening to this, I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day. Bye.